Welcome to my review of the Panasonic G7, and today I wanted to speak to you about my usage of this camera for the past 9 months and my observations really. I wanted to share these with you if you wanted to buy this camera for yourself or gift it to a friend. I wanted to speak to you about what should you expect out of this camera and what should you not. So before I begin this entire review session, let me let me give you a view of my usage. I'm an amateur photographer. I have very little experience of professional photography, and that's the reason I bought a mirrorless camera and intermediate or next to professional kind of camera. My experience with this camera has been very good. I did a lot of research when I bought the Panasonic G7. I went through reviews of other mirrorless cameras, other DSLR camera. Mainly, I was looking at the Canon D70D and the Sony A6000, which of course has now got an upgrade with I think Sony A6300. So I decided to buy this camera because of its 4K features, which was unique then, and even today it's considered one of the very few features in any DSLR, any camera. Most of the pro cameras still don't have 4K video capability. I believe Nikon 500 has come up with 4K capability. So that was definitely the cornerstone of buying this camera. I was, however, apprehensive of the fact that I was not buying into the Canon or the Canon or the Nikon system. And the reason was that everybody used to look at camera system as Canon and Nikon, and even they do today. And whenever you go out and speak to your friends, folks, or anybody, and you say that you bought a new DSLR and you're into photography, the first question is, what's the camera? Is it Canon or is it Nikon? And if you don't have one of these, you're expected not to have bought into the league. So Canon and Nikon hold that kind of premium in the market, and taking a decision to buy a Panasonic was really bold one for me, because I had no idea about this brand. I had no clue how this camera is going to perform. I had no clue what is the selection of lenses that this series has. But today I have got a fairly good understanding. And first thing first, I need to tell you, this is an awesome camera. I think when it comes to innovation, you should always reward a company which is operating at the bleeding edge or the cutting edge of technology. And by bringing a camera which is less than $1,000 with 4K capability, Panasonic has proved to the professional camera as well as Nikons and Canons of the world, that they can bring a very good product at a very decent price point. And if the other camera manufacturers don't keep up to the pace, it can actually take up the market share, which has been represented by awesome sales of this particular mirrorless camera. So, what's been my experience of this mirrorless camera? How did I find it? What are the things that you should expect and you should not expect out of this camera? Let's go through some of those. So, first thing first, I think this uses a feature called as depth to defocus, which is a form of a contrast detection focus. And what it does is that it looks at any picture or an image and sort of categorizes it based on contrast of that image, basis high contrast and low contrast, and then the lens makes certain algorithmic calculations to achieve the perfect composition, to achieve the perfect focusing. This is a very different technology from what Canon uses, which is the dual focus technology, and is awesome and it's really good. And I was a little amazed at what I found out, because I wasn't very sure how this camera's autofocus is going to perform. So I was quite happy with overall autofocusing of this camera. Very decently focuses. It has got 49 autofocusing points, and you can pretty much cover the entire screen based on those 49 points that you've got. So it's pretty decent in terms of autofocusing. However, I do want to say something about the autofocusing capabilities, but I'll come to that after I talk to you about all the great things about this camera, because the great things about this camera is quite a huge list, and I don't want to take the glory out of this camera. Second thing I wanted to talk to you about is the form factor. This is the size of the camera. I want you to have a close look at it. It's fairly small. It's as small as the palm of my hand, and it's not heavy. It's only half a kg or close to, I think, 450 grams or so. So carrying this camera, holding this camera, taking a shot is a breeze. You don't have to worry about the weight of the camera. You don't have to worry about the weight of the lenses. Pretty small lenses, not heavy onto your hands. You could just by looking at my hands, you could tell how light this camera is. But it's not very light, so you won't feel it's a flimsy piece of metal. There's no metal though in it. It's mostly plastic. But I think the weight is well balanced of this camera. It's a pretty decent one. So that's one of the capabilities that I would like to speak about. Another thing I want to talk to you about this camera in particular is the fact that when I was buying this camera, I was new to photography, and I wanted to know everything that you as a photographer can do with shutter speed, with aperture, with ISO. And as a camera man or a camera person, I wanted to know if I use a particular ratio of shutter speed versus ISO versus aperture. I wanted to see how's the impact on the image. Now, I looked at a lot of cameras. I looked at Nikon especially because I was told that Nikon's image quality is really good. But I found out that Nikon did not have that capability at all to begin with. The capability of constant preview, the capability to review a picture on the go. That's something that this camera has. So you don't have to worry while you're taking the snap, because if you keep this camera on a constant preview mode, the camera tends to keep a simulated image of the scenario that you're taking. For example, if you're going to play around with the dial mode, if you're going to reduce the aperture, then the camera will automatically react accordingly. Now Canon has this, but only the higher end Canons, I think the 70D and above, have these. And this was one of the reasons that I didn't want to look at the Nikon world. But I want to highlight the constant preview mode in this camera, because that's one of the key things that you should, as a new photographer who's getting into photography, should think about. You should always get a camera which is able to give you a simulated image of what you're going to take even before that exercise gets done. So that's about the preview. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the features. Amazing set of features. 4K is the feature which was launched with this camera, and of course after that I heard that the 4K capability has now come in A6300 also. So 4K is no longer an absolutely new thing to the market, and now even the mobile phones have 4K, and very soon, like any new technology, 4K will also be common and new cameras will come. But this was the guy which pioneered 4K, and this is a guy which really has taken 4K to the next level. The 4K stills is also one of the features which is packed in this camera. So while you're taking a 4K video, you can also take 4K stills, and then the camera starts to operating as a extremely high shutter speed camera, almost operating at 30 frames per second and taking snaps of 8 megapixels, which is amazing for a camera of this price and this size. And it has got some innovative methods of capturing the pictures just before you press the shutter button and so on and so forth. I've covered it in my review, but I just want to tell you that that's an awesome feature. You really need to buy this camera for the 4K capabilities if you don't have one already. The other features that I wanted to speak to you about is time-lapse mode. No camera that I've seen so far has an inbuilt time-lapse mode, uh, which can also process the images in the time-lapse. That's amazing capability. It's got features like snap movie, focus peaking, zebra, uh, very innovative and high-end features which only the pro cameras have. You can view a histogram within the screen, the display screen. All of these are features which you would not find in any of the mid-range DSLRs. Take my word for it, go ahead and do your research. You will not find that in any of the mid-range DSLR. I'm not saying it's not available in the high-end DSLRs, it's available, but not in the mid-range ones. So that's definitely a good point. What's the other feature? Surprisingly, no one has spoken about it, but I found that the audio system of this camera is fairly good. You always talk about crappy audio systems in DSLRs, and we always talk about using a lavalier microphone and using something like the Blue Yeti. And I've got a Blue Yeti in front of me, and now I'm recording it in Blue Yeti because the camera is not doing the recording job. And I also have a Rode lavalier microphone. And what I found is the audio quality is fairly comparable to what you get out of a Yeti or a lavalier, which is very decent, which is very unexpected of a system like this. So overall, I think the audio is also very decent. Now let's talk about something which I didn't like about the camera. And like every camera, you have issues, and these are really my personal opinions. You might have a very different opinion than what I have. This is what you see in this particular eyepiece is exactly what the sensor sees, which is a good thing because you can always know what the sensor is seeing. You can look at the sun and take a snap without worrying about your eyes getting damaged. So that's the advantage. But there is a lag. There is a definite lag between what you see versus what the image actually is. And this is especially true when you take pictures in slow shutter speed or in low lighting conditions. You can definitely feel the lag if you only look through the camera's eyepiece and take a snap and probably want to take a quick action image. You need to be prepared for it because as you move the camera, the image will kind of wipe itself, because you cannot notice that it's a digital image when you see that through this, which is not a big deal for me because I don't do fast moving soccer photography where the subjects are moving really fast and you're taking pictures and clicking away to glory. But I believe if you are going to do a lot of wildlife photography, sports photography, then this is something that you need to consider, that the image will be little shaky when you look at. Shaky is the wrong word. I think the image will be a little delayed compared to what you'd see through the OVF. That's one thing. The battery capability. I have had two batteries in this camera, and I would say that the battery is fairly good. It takes about 450 snaps or so. And that's what the manufacturers say. I haven't checked out exactly, to the T if it takes those number of snaps. But if it does, it does. But I can tell you one thing, the battery will not generally last you, the whole day. So if I use this camera half a day and the battery is done. I take videos, I swap between videos and stills, and I always see that the battery is out. It's good that I always have a spare battery and I always keep that charged and ready. So the moment the battery is down, I take it out and just swipe another one. But there is a issue with the battery. The battery needs to be a little more powerful so that it can last you longer. Also, the battery is not very reliable. So you might start the camera with a full battery, the bars will go down, and if the final bar is showing, do not expect the camera to last even 15 minutes. It will simply start showing the red blinker and go off. So there is a reliability issue also of the battery as much as there is a longevity of the battery. So there is a consistency and reliability issue both in case of the battery. Okay, the form factor. Now I mentioned that the form factor is small, it's nice, it's it really snugs and fits into your hand. That's a great thing. And now I feel it's not a great thing as well. Now, for me personally, my hands are big, and I find holding this camera to be kind of a painful activity because my hands don't automatically wrap around the camera if I want to. If the camera was of this size, probably I would have held it like this. But because the camera is smaller, now I almost have to hold it all the way down, and there is this kind of a awkward holding position for me. Now, I don't have to necessarily do that. I can hold it like this and take the snap, and hold it with the other hand and take the snap. But if you were to say that, can you take this camera with one hand operations? Not with a person having bigger hands. Probably for somebody who has smaller hands. I don't think I'm going to be gender biased here, but if you have smaller hands or if you're a lady, this is a very useful camera for you. Very small camera and very lightweight camera, so this is good. But if you prefer something big like I do, maybe not the best thing to do. So form factor is a good and a bad thing depending on how you look at it. Overall, I don't really worry about the form factor, but it's decent. What else? Autofocusing capability. I spoke about the autofocusing capability as a strength in my earlier section of the video, but I also want to tell you that the autofocusing is not the best in this camera. So I feel, and this is really me feeling, that there are times when the focusing takes a bit of a while to get to know what's happening. So the camera is operating, it doesn't do the womp hunting thing that a Nikon would do. I haven't used a Canon, so I can't really comment about the Canon because I've heard that the dual focus camera is really, the dual focus system is really good in terms of autofocusing, but here it's okay. I won't call it the best autofocusing. If there's enough light, probably it will do a better job. A lot of my photos and videos, so sometimes that could be the factor, but I feel there is a lag in what the camera tries to capture versus the time it takes to capture. So I think that's pretty much about it. Again, the views I've expressed is based purely on my experience of using this camera. I don't think that could be the same for you. It could be very different, but generically I would definitely suggest it's not a bad camera to have, especially if you're entering the world of photography. Camera is loaded with features. The buttons, it's loaded with buttons. There are buttons all over the camera's body. There's so many of them that will take you a while to get used to the buttons, and I would say that I've not even explored half of the menu. Having even used this camera for 9 months, I've not been able to explore it. It has got a huge set of menus on the video side, and I won't want to speak about it because I don't know much about videography. I believe there are things like S-Log and not S-Log, V-Log and stuff like that. But I haven't seen or I haven't operated on the video side of the camera. I've only mostly operated on the still side of it. So it's good. I would say it's a good camera to hold on to. It's a nice camera to buy if you're aware of these particular factors that I've mentioned. So with that, I'd like to thank you for coming along with me all this while to listen to what I wanted to tell you about Panasonic G7. If you think that you have additional comments apart from what I've said, or if you think that you've got any constructive comments for me personally about the comments about the reviews I have given, please do not hesitate. I'm always open to commentary either which ways because I'm always learning as much as everybody else. So please give your comments in the comment section. Thank you again, and goodbye, and see you in the next video.